The United States had, however, carried out unannounced strategic bomber exercises at dangerous times for what could potentially develop against the Iranian regime. Today, the flight of a giant American B-52 aircraft was recorded. This massive plane took off from the state of Louisiana, specifically from Barksdale Air Force Base. This aircraft was observed flying in this manner for many long hours, starting its journey from Louisiana and continuing all the way to the Pacific Ocean. After reaching its destination, it then turned around and made its way back to the very same state, returning to its home base. This aircraft, when it took flight in such a distinctive manner, undoubtedly provoked a multitude of inquiries and various actions. Furthermore, several significant sources have indicated that we are witnessing clear strategic maneuvers evident in this aircraft's prolonged flights during such critical hours. Additionally, this particular maneuver involved the aircraft flying for 10 hours, a significant duration that demands attention regarding its flight characteristics and the specific trajectory it will follow. And of course, this very same overflight. And why is this particular overflight considered so important? Because we witnessed this exact same overflight before the 12-day war. But with American B-2 stealth bombers, they appeared flying in this specific manner, performing continuous maneuvers with aerial refueling aircraft heading towards the state of Hawaii. And then the United States orchestrated what appeared to be a deception with several B-2 bombers that flew towards the Pacific Ocean. But in actual fact, they were flying directly towards Iran with the intention of striking their nuclear facilities. And after that, the B-2 bomber actually arrived to complete this mission and strike the nuclear facilities on the very last day of the 12-day war. And this is precisely what makes the issue of this aircraft flying today in such a manner extremely significant. But of course, this does not necessarily mean that the exact same scenario which was carried out by the United States during the 12-day war will be repeated in precisely the same way and style. Absolutely not. On the contrary, the road is now paved for the United States to fly across the Pacific to launch a direct strike on Iran. There are numerous bases and strategic points for refueling operations, especially considering that B-52 aircraft are also deployed in Guam, strategically positioned facing China, and this represents an extremely significant matter for Guam. Recently, 2 B-52 aircraft made an appearance in this manner in Guam and were prominently displayed heading in the direction of China. It conducted a show of force to affirm the partnership and confirm the presence of the United States, primarily for the protection of Taiwan. But of course, with the Saudi with this maneuver and the B-52's presence in this manner, this could simply mean that the B-52 aircraft are preparing for something through their deployment in this way. Observe that there are 5 points for fuel replenishment. If U.S. strategic bombers were to launch towards Iran from here, you'll notice that first there's a refueling stop heading towards California. After that, they proceed to Hawaii and from there on to Guam. Following that, they head towards the Strait of Malacca, specifically to West Malaysia. Then at Diego Garcia Base, they undergo another refueling operation. Subsequently, the aircraft take off to launch the necessary strikes deep within Iranian territory. This was the same method the U.S. used, for instance, to strike Afghanistan during the Taliban's time. And of course, for the United States, what's important about Diego Garcia is that it's fully prepared to support strategic bombers. There are at least 3 KC-135 aircraft for refueling. Should any strategic bombers arrive, these aircraft would be capable of providing support for the successful execution of this specific operation. Crucially, the launch operation originating from Diego Garcia would pose a significant threat to eastern Iran and also to northeastern Iran, specifically targeting Mashhad. And Mashhad, notably, is widely considered to be the birthplace of the Supreme Leader. It is widely believed that the Iranian Supreme Leader is consistently present alongside the most crucial leaders within this particular region. And what might confirm that the Supreme Leader is still present in that region specifically is the flight of the Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Ali Larijani, from Qatar, who then headed to Mashhad in this manner by his plane after returning, of course, from Oman. He had flown to Qatar, and in this way, instead of flying to Tehran, this is the same flight by Ali Larijani in October of last year when he flew from Moscow to head to Mashhad. In other words, the Supreme Leader is now moving to try and put his house in order regarding the ongoing negotiations aiming to avert any potential strike that might be coming. Therefore, Diego Garcia is crucial for strategic bombers, whether they are the B-52s or the B-2s. But now, the appearance of the B-52 and its potential nomination to strike Iran once again is a very significant and important matter. Because there is a significant difference between these two aircraft. The B-2, for example, when it takes to the skies and makes its way towards a specific objective, such as heading in the general direction of Iran, then you will typically find established defensive systems and a multitude of radars present in that region. The B-2 is typically specialized in radar evasion, designed to strike high-value targets just once. For example, nuclear facilities, much like the United States did last year. It completes this single strike, then promptly returns to its home bases, or it carries out a crucial operation at the very beginning of any conflict. This is a critically important capability. It vanishes from enemy radars without the adversary ever knowing what exactly is transpiring. The command targets the radars and the defense systems, then directly clears the skies of warplanes to enter and execute the necessary operation. However, given that Iran's position concerning its defense systems is extremely weak today, especially after everything that occurred during the 12-day war, and regarding its radar capabilities, it is now completely exposed. It would make sense for the B-52 to be deployed this time to strike deep into Iranian territory, especially considering that the B-52 is capable of carrying significantly larger quantities of bombs compared to the B-2, and it possesses the capability to fly from a safe distance well beyond the threat range of both defensive and radar systems, even if there were some advanced systems capable of posing a challenge to this strategic bomber. It is also capable of sustained flight for Chile for extremely long hours and striking targets of critical importance, which leads to the crippling of enemy regions, and after that achieving the desired objectives for the United States of America. This is where the mission comes in for the American side, and more importantly, the radar and defensive situation indeed appears quite weak for Iran. Yesterday, a photograph emerged from the celebratory event marking the anniversary of the Iranian Revolution's establishment. In this image, this particular defense system, known as the Sayyad system, was prominently featured. Positioned right beside it was either the transformer unit or the dedicated power generation point specifically for this defense system. However, no other defense systems were visible or displayed in the photograph. For example, the Najm systems were not present in this region, in Isfahan, and Isfahan is extremely important, and you notice that there's evidence of weakness and disappearance of radars because of all that happened in the 12-day war. Indeed, Iran, as published by the Institute for Science and International Security, Iran has begun taking precautions, anticipating an imminent breach at the Isfahan facility, which could be attacked in various ways. This elevated area with its 3 entrances has been sealed off, adopting a strategy of closed access points for the Iranian side. You can see this first entrance and the central entrance and the northern entrance. So observe this clear satellite image, which clearly shows you how they sealed off these access points. These are the entrances. Notice how they have all been completely sealed off by the Iranian side, specifically to mitigate the impact of any potential strike that might target this elevated mountain, which is located precisely in Isfahan. And also this measure aims to prevent any special forces from being able to gain entry in the event of any airborne landing at this particular location. However, the very same institute also released some quite striking and attention-grabbing details today. He clarified through this that also south of the Natanz facility, the Iranian side began to operate swiftly, considering the negotiation conditions. This is the very Natanz facility that was significantly struck. To the south of it, you can find the entrances. There are fortifications and an expansion project for this extremely crucial facility. Observe this particular entrance. There is a certain type of fortification present. The phenomenon we're observing here involves extensive restoration and fortification efforts, and there's also a specific vehicle actively engaged in this very same endeavor, and you'll clearly notice other vehicles which indicate they are preparing for the reality that these entry points could potentially be struck. And observe this closer photograph, and it clearly illustrates how the details have been altered at this specific entrance. And furthermore, you'll find the continuous presence of vehicles at the entrance located on the eastern side. Here you will certainly notice a significant number of vehicles actively operating at these particular locations. And note here also a group of other vehicles that truly prove to you through this institute that there is work to develop this facility south of Natanz for purposes that may be extremely dangerous. All these are variables Iran is working on with great speed before any strike takes place. The Iranian side previously stated that this is a point for storing centrifuges. But given the nature of this expansion and what the Institute is discussing, it appears the Iranian side has begun to consider uranium enrichment at this particular facility, especially since they completely lost what was present at the Natanz facility, the Fordo facility, and also the Isfahan facility. Therefore, the elevated point at the Isfahan facility, they are trying to preserve and develop this area, and it's entirely possible that B-2s or even B-52s could come to carry out operations in this area, given the weak air air defenses. Iran is trying to prepare for this scenario, especially after the recent meeting between Netanyahu and Donald Trump. This meeting, which lasted for 3 hours, that didn't yield many published details. I mean, there was no press conference through which you could see direct statements made to journalists. Things came to a halt when the American Axios website published that Trump had informed the Israeli Prime Minister that he preferred a diplomatic agreement over a military option. But if Iran rejects the agreement, then ultimately there is only one choice left, and that is the military option. Israeli circles believe that the United States, regardless of what unfolds, is actively preparing for a significant military strike deep within Iranian territory. The same sentiment is shared by Iranian officials. According to reports published by the American Washington Post, it had indicated that Iranian officials perceived the confrontation. There's no avoiding it with the United States, and these negotiations are merely to buy time. War is coming, therefore there's a clear Iranian conviction regarding this matter. Consequently, we've also started seeing German military cargo planes flying directly from Germany in the past 24 hours. Specifically, A400M military cargo planes have arrived in Tel Aviv in this manner, and this is the situation. And this is the flight recording of this particular aircraft. Yeah, these are C-5M Galaxy military transport aircraft, which are still being observed today. For example, one was seen departing from Europe, heading towards the Middle East as part of a continuous deployment of American defense systems. This recording is according to Flight Radar 24. In addition, the Pentagon is preparing to send an additional American aircraft carrier to the Middle East region. The Wall Street Journal and the War Zone, all of them reported on the details, and they mentioned that the aircraft carrier would be the George H.W. Bush. This aircraft carrier is essentially located right here in this particular region off the shores of Virginia, as we can observe, and it's currently conducting a series of naval exercises. If it were to proceed towards the region, it would probably take about 15 days or even slightly longer to arrive in the Mediterranean Sea. But what could they possibly spread? There are many scenarios, and of course, naami anandana daw ang ocean damo ay fana the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier could come to the Mediterranean Sea to support Israel and its allies and confront what might come from Iran. However, its presence in the Red Sea could also prove to be an extremely crucial matter for confronting potential attacks by the Houthi group, especially if they act in support of Iran should a war against Iran actually begin. Consequently, the aircraft carrier could potentially counter any strikes on Israel or exert significant pressure on the Houthi group. Offense is the best defense, and it also serves to protect the Bab al-Mandab Strait, because the Strait of Hormuz and the Bab al-Mandab Strait are vital once again. If there's an attack on it, a shutdown will cause oil prices to rise to an extremely high degree. Furthermore, their presence here would support not only Israel but also the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the other Arab Gulf states. For these aircraft to be present here, providing support to Israel, and also to be able to fly over Iraqi airspace to counter any potential threat that might originate from the Iranian side. This, of course, is in addition to the significant deployment of defensive systems throughout the Arab Gulf region and also within Israel itself. There is a large deployment of these defenses. And also today, news reports had indicated that American forces completely abandoned the Al Tanf base, which is situated at the tri-border junction between Iraq, Syria, and Jordan, and transferred control of this territory to the Syrian military. They had already largely departed. Syria also primarily in the regions controlled by the Syrian Democratic Forces, specifically east of the Euphrates River, starting from the Konoko base and extending to the Al Omar oil field base. Consequently, an evacuation from Iraq and a similar withdrawal from Syria signifies the clearing of potential targets and the United States' readiness for a potentially massive operation deep within Iranian territory. The American officials did not disagree with their Israeli counterparts, according to the Israeli leaks.